Hi, everyone. My name is Jennifer Reynolds, and I'm a family lawyer with Fresh Legal in Ottawa. Today, I'm chatting with Stephanie Sewell. Welcome, Stephanie.
Thank you very much.
Stephanie is an independent education consultant who has both taught in schools and homeschooled her own children. She provides help to families seeking guidance and support with their children's educational journey, be it in school or homeschooling. And as parents suddenly find themselves homeschooling their kids during this pandemic, I thought it would be helpful to invite Stephanie to chat with me about her top tips, as well as some of the special challenges that are faced by separating parents. So, Stephanie, parents today, as I said, they're unexpectedly homeschooling their kids and they're overwhelmed with the sudden expectations. What is your number one tip for parents right now?
It's definitely a tough situation that parents are finding themselves in. And I'm seeing more and more people starting to refer to this phenomenon as crisis schooling rather than homeschooling. And I really like that because I think it takes a lot of the pressure off. It acknowledges that we're in a crisis and it takes the pressure off the home. So there's a couple of things I thought about in response to that question. I think the first and most important thing is to take a step back and take a step inside so that you're really connecting with what's important for you and for your family. That is the most important thing right now, is that we survive this experience physically, mentally, and emotionally healthy as families. And the only person who can make that call for your family is you as the parent, by listening to your needs and to your kids' needs. From there, it's really important to establish routines in your family. Routines don't have to include schoolwork, though they may, but they don't have to. What routines give us is something to be anchored in during our days. They provide us with the sense of being grounded. We know what's coming next. We can be flexible with routines, but we have them to settle into when we're feeling confused, when we're feeling discombobulated, is a word that I find myself using a lot lately. And the other thing that I think is really important is to realize that there's so much of value in kids' lives that isn't schoolwork. Normally, our lives are so busy. Kids are limited in the amount of time that they have to draw or read or daydream or just play or sit and get bored. That's really limited in our usual lives. This is an opportunity right now for us to get more of that into our kids' lives. And as parents, it's easy for us to feel, oh, if they wind up not doing schoolwork or not doing as much schoolwork as I feel they should, then they're wasting time and they're going to be behind. But in fact, I feel that they're getting enriched in a different way.
Mm.
And there's all kinds of research out there to show the value of these alternative ways of spending time. For example, a thing that we talk about a lot these days is executive functioning skills. They seem to be quite lacking in a lot of children. And it's something that teachers talk about a lot, parents talk about a lot. What's going on? How come we're seeing that our kids are having a hard time with this? Free play is one of the best ways to develop executive functioning skills. That time that you take when you're just playing by yourself or with a sibling and you're making decisions about what to do and is this safe? Do I want to do this? What rules am I going to set up for this game that I'm playing? Those are all the skills that show up in our regular lives when it comes to all kinds of other things, the executive functioning skills.
Mm-hmm.
So step back, breathe, find a routine that works for you and your family, and recognize the value of non-academic time to help you be able to breathe and establish a routine that works well for you.
That sort of ties into my next question, which was about balance. So many parents are homeschooling or crisis schooling, which I really like that
Yep.
phrase. They're crisis schooling and they're working from home and they're struggling to do two different things.
Yep.
As they're establishing these new routines and making room for what works for them, do you have tips for finding balance between having to meet all the expectations of all the different roles suddenly parents are taking on?
It's really an important thing. And I think that I read somewhere, and I've seen the same idea in other places, a lot of parents right now are feeling that they should be able to do 3 full-time jobs.
Mm-hmm.
There's their full-time job, there's parenting,
Yeah.
and there's teaching. And parents are feeling of course, completely overwhelmed and completely lost and just almost frozen with what do I do? I can't do it all. So I'm going to do nothing.
Yeah.
And or I'm going to like suddenly panic and throw worksheets at my kid and get upset if it's not working. Like we're all very on edge emotionally. It's a really, really, really stressful thing. So I go back to that idea of step inside and
Mhm.
find what your family's needs are. If both parents, or if there's one parent at home, if that parent has to work full time, that's a need that your family has, and that needs to be honored. You need to be able to work with that.
Mm.
So set up your routine in a way that allows you to do the best you can within that. Some parents are finding that it's easy-ish for them to get up early and get in, a good chunk of work time before their kids are really out of bed and beyond breakfast. Depends on the age of your kids, of course. That's one idea, is to kind of stagger your day a little bit. So there's time that's more focused around work, time that's more focused around your kids. I think another thing that you can do is, if you are all together at breakfast time, use that time to kind of check in with each other about what the day is looking like. Let your child know if you've got a work meeting that it's really important and you can't negotiate. It's at 11 o'clock. Well, for this time, what can the child do? Just have that in place
Mhm.
ahead of time. That can seem like a really onerous thing the first few times you do that kind of check-in with your kids. But once you get into the habit of it, it really does start to come more easily. It's smoother, and people are able to start acknowledging other people's needs during the day, be they children's needs or parents' needs. One thing that I've done with my kids from the time they were very, very young is there are moments of please don't interrupt time.
Okay.
So that, as a parent who's worked at home and homeschooled, they needed to know these are please don't interrupt times. And they got to know that pretty quickly. So that's a phrase
Mhm.
that I would offer to other people as well. Um, I think within that as well, depending on what your work situation is, think about what you can do. We've spent a lot of time in what we can't do. There's that
Mm.
feeling of I just can't do it all.
Yeah.
So what can you do? If you normally work for 7.5 hours, is it possible for you to work? Do you feel that you can work well for 4 hours?
Mhm.
Talk to your boss, your manager, about this is what I can do. Is there a way that we can modify the expectations so that I can be doing what I can do, that I can do well? Likewise, in Ontario in particular, schools are starting to send home work for kids, and it's going to be marked. It's not as clear as it might be about how those marks will be used,
Mhm.
but because that work is coming home and because evaluation is getting thrown around, parents are starting to feel, oh my goodness, like my kid has to do this. So again, reach out to your child's teacher. We can probably do an hour most days.
Mhm.
What would you see as being what we should focus on during that time? What can you do? Communicate that. And another little tip within all of that, there's going to be a lot of time when you're telling your kids you can't interrupt right now.
Mhm.
But when you do have time for them, try to reach out to them before they reach out to you.
Mm.
Because if they're always feeling, I want my mom, but I can't, or
Yeah.
mom, can you, and you're telling them to be quiet, there's a lot of push away. If you can show your kid that you're reaching out to them, that nourishes them in a whole other
Mhm.
way. So
It,
whenever you can, reach out to them.
it sounds like there's a lot of communication needed, communication with yourself, communication with your workplace, communication with your kids and the teacher to figure out what's going to work. And
Yep.
maybe what works for you isn't going to be what works for the family next door.
And it absolutely won't be. And I think
Yeah.
that's a really great opportunity that we have right now to realize that our needs as families, as people, are individual within the context of our society, of course. But
Yeah.
when we can be clear on our needs and communicate those,
Yeah.
then we can interact really successfully with others.
Okay. And I have one more question, which this flows into nicely too, when it comes to communication and your house not working like another house. A lot of our clients are parents who have been through a separation
Yep.
and they've been co-parenting for a while, and suddenly they're finding themselves co-teaching as well. Do you have any tips for parents for coordinating back and forth as kids go maybe once a week or once every few days to a different home? How can those two parents work together?
Absolutely. And I think you're perfectly right. It's communication.
Mm,
Whatever you have established as your co-parenting is what can help you establish your continued co-parenting in this situation. Because again, the schoolwork has to come after the well-being of the family.
mm,
So if your co-parenting involves um, a general agreement on what kids' routines are, then that routine allows for time for the kids to do schoolwork if everybody is in agreement that that's what they're doing. When you're communicating with your ex-partner um, about whether the kids will do schoolwork or not, or what schoolwork they'll do, make sure you're coming from that perspective of what supports everybody's well-being.
mm,
Different people will have different comfort levels about schoolwork. And if one parent is saying, you know, they really should be doing everything that's coming from school, and the other parent is saying it's really fine that they're spending more time playing, then that's a conversation to have. And again, this idea of being aware of what the benefits are of non-schoolwork time can perhaps really help you to find a compromise within that.
yeah.
Again, it's the communication that will help you to figure it out. Um, One of the things that I talk a lot about with people in normal times, and I think it's relevant here as well, is the idea of who who drives kids' education, who kind of owns their education. What is education? These are obviously big
Mhm,
questions that are outside the scope of this conversation. But if you think of the idea of your child's education as belonging to them and as being something that they can be empowered to run,
mhm,
that's something that you can do for kids who are going back and forth between houses right now. So if you and your spouse and your kids agree, okay, you're going to do half an hour of math out of this workbook every day, then help your child to set up a simple system to track where they're at, what to do if they have questions, how does the book go back and forth between the two houses. Try to hand as much of that responsibility, that ownership to your child as you can. And again, that's a hidden opportunity. It helps with the logistics of this time,
mhm.
also helps them to realize that they own their learning and will always do so.
Well, thank you so much, Stephanie. I think some of those tips are really useful. And like you said, there's a lot that you offer that's beyond the scope of what we could talk about today. If you are interested in learning more, you can check out Stephanie's website at stephaniesewell.ca. And we'll also put that link up with the video. And we'll share a link to her current Facebook group, which is all for parents who are unexpectedly homeschooling their kids, which is facebook.com/groups/unexpected homeschooling. Thank you so much for watching, everybody, and we hope that you stay safe and healthy.